Hey guys, welcome back. Today I've got to swap out the pickups in this very nice Japanese-made Yamaha bass. For tech, this is very much a bread and butter job, and I guess it's probably the most popular, one of the most popular mods that DIYs have a go at. But in my experience, even a straightforward job like this very rarely goes completely to script. I've already got videos on rusty and broken screws, stripped holes, crooked pickups, knackered foam, and all of those sort of things. So today I thought I would just turn the camera on and see what happens. So already there's a minor issue. These pickups are a set, but the J has pole pieces that are flush with the cover, and the P has magnets that are proud and actually surprisingly sharp on the top there. I think you could really catch your fingertip calluses on them, so I'm going to put shims on the tops of the bobbins. They're proud by 0.8 of a millimetre, and these scraps of veneer are just under that, but I think they'll be fine. Normally you'd do this during a string change, but this bass has flat wounds which are staying on, so I'll just have to work around them. To thread them back through the string tree and the bridge, I'd have to straighten out the wraps, and there's a real risk of fatiguing the strings and breaking them. I did note down the pickup heights, but I'll have to tweak the new ones anyway. Plus, it looks like the existing foam isn't working well because a couple of the screws had been unwound, but the heads were sticking up above the covers. I managed to desolder one of the pickup wires, but access is just too cramped here. I'll end up burning insulation or even my fingers if I persevere, so I had to pull the pots out. These wires have been cut very short, so pulling the pots up is really only a slight improvement, to be honest, but I did manage to desolder the 4 pickup wires just fine. For earth wires like this, I normally crank my iron temp all the way up because they're soldered to the pot casings. There were 3 washers under each pot, but that's okay. If you can't fit a nut and a shakeproof washer underneath to get the right height on top, then it's perfectly fine to simply use 2 or 3 shakeproof washers stacked up like this. Having said that, with such short, stiff wires and limited space, lining up all those washers is likely to be a bit of a pain when I go to put the pots back in. Oh, and don't be tempted to use flat washers instead, because the pots will come loose over time. Here I'm just using my little desolder pump to open the eyelet again to take the hot wires from the new pickups. The original foam really looks too soft to me, and these new pickups didn't come with any, so here I'm cutting some new stuff from an old mouse pad. It's really the perfect foam for this. I need to stack up a couple of layers, but a few drops of superglue makes that easy enough to do. These pickups were wax potted, so I'm just rubbing them with a bit of white spirit so I can glue the foam to the bottom of them. You can also glue the foam to the bottom of the routs. Either way is fine, it's just to stop the foam from being dislodged from the centre by the wires when you're installing the pickups, because that can make the pickup kind of hard to adjust or tilt over at a funny angle. I noticed this earth wire from the shielding paint in the route was pointing away from the cavity, so I repositioned it just to give me a bit of extra slack on that volume pot. Twisting the leads like this just helps with threading them into the cavity, and I guess it also slightly improves EMI rejection. Really, pickups should have shielded leads. I guess these are meant to look like vintage Fender items though. There's a loose winding there. I'm just going to gently and carefully push that back into the wax. Top tip, I use just a tiny bit of lanolin grease on the threads. This makes the pickups much easier to adjust and stops the screws from rusting in place over time. I'm also careful here to make sure the screws are going back into the original holes and not just cutting a new thread in the wrong spot or at the wrong angle. At this stage, it's probably worth mentioning that the winding wire is only the thickness of a single hair, and without the covers on, you really have to handle them with care. Also try to minimize the amount of repositioning you do with the leads because you can actually damage the wires or the soldering at the eyelets. Cloth covered wire doesn't need to be stripped like modern stuff, you can just pull the braiding back. Here I'm just trying to get the existing wires out of harm's way. I really don't want to brush them with the iron. And check it out, Blu-Tack is really handy for this sort of fiddly wiring job. I know I've said it before. You need both hands to solder effectively, and there's really no other way that pot is going to stay put. There was a lot of flux burning from this joint. I have no idea why, but the joint itself has kind of come out dry and dull looking. Perhaps there's lead-free solder in there as well, I don't know. But I'm going to redo the joint just to be sure it's reliable. And because I'm heating and then reheating the lug, I'll use a heatsink clip just to avoid damaging the pot. Yep, that looks much better. Soldering up to pot casings can take quite a bit of practice. I crank the iron all the way up. I'm actually holding the wire in place with the iron tip while I feed the fresh solder. Then I use that little yellow screwdriver to keep the lead in place while the joint cools. You have to work quickly here and have the screwdriver ready to go. Again, this would be impossible without securing the pot with Blu-Tack. On each pot I ended up using 2 large shake-proof washers instead of the 3 small originals. It was just easy to line them up and get the pots in that way. When you tighten the pots up, you want to make sure there's no tension on the wires and also that the lugs are well clear of any shielding paint. Also make sure there's no wires getting squashed or pinched under the pots. So there you go. It turned out to be pretty straightforward, but as expected there were just a couple of little speed bumps along the way. But I guess those little challenges are all part of the fun. And these pickups sound great. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a thumbs up. And I think if you've made it this far through a pickup swap video, honestly, I think you should definitely subscribe. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.